What's up, YouTube? So today I want to talk about how to create a Microsound synthesizer out of Faceplant's Granular engine. So what is a Microsound synthesizer? Essentially, you can think of it as very small loops of sound that are essentially pitched to create the pitch of the sound, rather than the traditional pitch, how we would think of it. So you can think of plugins like Polyverse I Wish, which literally just repeats the sound, and the speed of the repeats is determined by the pitch input from the keyboard. So ideally, what we want to create in today's video is a synth patch that acts like I Wish, but in a standalone synth. We can load up a sample inside the synth and microsound it. Anyway, without blabbering too much, let's dive in and have a look. So I'm going to quickly jump into Faceplant and we can add a granular generator. So the whole idea of this patch is based around this hertz rate over here, as opposed to the traditional density setting like we would understand traditional granulars to work. What the hertz rate does is it allows you to actually change the repeat speed of the grains determined by an actual hertz value. So this is handy because we understand musical pitch with hertz. So essentially, we can kind of turn the key tracking off on the grains, use this instead, and we've created a Microsound synthesizer. So let me show you a practical example. I want to use something like a vocal phrase over here, and then let's use these phonemes, because within this sample, there is so much texture which we can grab from. The next big step in terms of the setup is to pitch the grains using this hertz to any multiple of 55. So that's essentially any A in the chromatic spectrum. So it can be 55, 110, 220, 440. I generally find stuff like 110, 55 kind of sounds a little bit more textureful because the size of the grains is a little bit larger, but you can experiment with this. You can also change it in the actual note modulator over here. So let's add the note modulator, and if we set this output to modulate this by 100%, we've essentially key tracked this grain size. So this is basically the patch setup. There's a couple more things that we need to do to fine tune it, but like I said, what we could also potentially do is change the octave of the sound by just setting this root to different A's. Does that make sense? But I'm going to leave it as is just to make it simpler for you guys. The next step is to turn off the key tracking of the sample. So if we set harmonic to 0, this sample is no longer key tracked. However, that being said, we do need the sample to actually progress through the playhead. So we do need to give it some kind of pitch information. So let's set this shift to 110 for now, which is the same as this one. And we can actually edit this later in the patch to create formant as opposed to pitch variations. Okay, so let's quickly have a listen to what we've created. Okay, so the next very important thing is to make very small grain envelopes here. Okay, so then we want to scrub through the sample to find a part of there that has some nice textures. And so here what we can do is we can experiment now with this shift parameter. So I'm actually going to set up a macro in bipolar mode, and then we're going to just set this to modulate this. And so here I'm going to set up my MIDI controller to modulate this macro over here. And so now we can actually play the sound. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to set up a couple of parts which we can sweep to in this sound. So I want to set up a macro that goes through a remap. So let's say macro to remap, and then from this remap to the sample play position. So I'm going to set up another controller on my MIDI controller to do macro number 2. And so this way we can actually sweep through the sound. And I want to set up a couple of presets using this remap over here for parts in the sound which I think sound the best. We're going to have to play the sound and then actually use this and to sweep in a couple of presets this way. So the trick is to like sweep the MIDI controller to that value and then adjust the bar. You're kind of creating a couple of presets which we can then play as the sound progresses. And then just to give it a slightly more natural feel, it's not jumping exactly to the values. We can send this through the slew limiter. So it's going 84%. Let's send it to this, and then this output to here by 84%. And so this now allows us to smooth the values that we transpose to. So if you look here, it's kind of stepped, and then we can change that steppedness with this parameter over here. Are you seeing that? Very, very infected mushroomy. So you're not limited to doing these kind of formanty things with this technique. You can actually use this technique to create really crazy, high-techy kind of sounds by not using the note, rather using something like a random on 1/16. And so then what's going to happen here is you're creating these micro sounds, but it's going to be random pitches. So it's going to kind of sound like really crazy, glitchy sounds instead. And we're also not just limited to kind of like vocal sounds to load in there. We can use all sorts of weird Foley textures. Well, I think that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm going to be uploading a couple of these presets to my Patreon for all my $5 supporters. So if you want to know what that's all about, check out the links in the description. And yeah, thank you for watching. See you guys next time. Cheers.